All right, hello everyone. My name is Ken Rodas, and I'll be doing the webcast on Star Center's best practices. So, what is a Star Center? As you know, a Star Center in Maximo is the very first screen that the user displays. So when you have this screen displaying information that makes it slow or it's not very essential, it can really hinder the performance of Maximo. So we want to have this screen that most people are going to see, very snappy, very showing the essential information, and this essential word you're going to hear me saying a lot in this presentation. So this webcast consists of a few topics. So the first one is going to go to all the contents that what Star Center can have. Then we're going to get right into the best practices. It is an overall, like in an overall perspective, what are the best techniques for the configuring a Star Center. Then we have how can we edit the Star Center for all the users. Then we're going to get into the Portlet queries and what are the best practices when setting these up. Then we're going to see what are the new Star Center features in Maximo 7.6, and then I'm going to display a demo. So let's get right into it. So what is, like I said, a Star Center's initial loading screen that contains portlets which display targeted essential information. So what can exactly a Star Center contain? If this is your first time looking at Star Center, there are 8 different portlets you can see in your Star Center. So let's just quickly go over all of them right now. So I'm going to zoom in on the first one here. So the first one is the quick insert. This is a very simple portlet that's just going to allow you to quickly create a record in any application. So for example, you work a lot with work management, then you're going to have a quick insert to the work order tracking application. And that portlet is going to have, let's say, for example, a link that's going to quickly let you create a new work order or a new inventory item you work for procurement or anything about that sort. So we'll get more into this later, but you have to be very selective about this portlet here, who you give it to. The second one to the right is the bulletin board. This is pretty straightforward. This just displays all the messages that have been posted by the administrator in Maximo. And it's a great way of communicating changes, outages, anything like that regarding to Maximo to all the users. The next one we have right under it is the inbox assignments. This portlet is going to display all the records that require attention from the currently logged in user through the workflow application. So any workflow assignments that the currently logged in user has are going to be displayed here, and then the user can get more information regarding those records by just clicking on them. The next one here we have right next to it is the favorite applications. In this case, this portlet is set up as security users and groups. So that means that we can set up that portlet to list all our favorite applications as we want to see them. And instead of going through the menu that you can see on the left here, instead of going here every single time we want to access an application, we can simply click one of these icons that we can set up, and it's going to take us directly to the application. So it's very straightforward. So now getting into more interesting portlets, we have the KPI list just below here. The KPI list, KPI stands for Key Performance Indicator. So the KPI list, it's going to have one or more KPIs which are going to run every time the Star Center loads, and it's going to display the current value of each KPI. So we're going to get into this later, but you have to be careful with how many KPI you have in your KPI list. Along the same lines, we have what is called the KPI graph, which it's pretty much the same thing as the KPI list, except it's going to display the results in a graphical way. If you set only one KPI in your portlet, it's going to display it in a meter. It's going to display a meter graph. If you set multiple, it's going to display a bar graph, as you can see here, which you're going to be able to compare all your values. Then we have the report list you can see up here. The report list is simply going to display all the reports that you want it to display, and instead of going into the application to run the report, you can just simply click on this portlet, and then it's going to run the report directly. So one thing I'd like to mention about this is make sure any report that you put in this portlet does not have the printing enabled, because if you click on that report, it's going to directly print the work order. And last but not least, we have a result set. This is one of the most interesting, this is probably one of the most useful portlets, because you set up a query with this in any application in Maximo, which is going to get any kind of records that you want from the database, and it's going to display them here. Also, the portlet is going to let you display all these results in a graphical way, sorted by any field available in the database for that application. So, the next thing we're going to get into is just get right into the best practices. So, given the ability we have to access the database, these guidelines should be followed to make the best out of the Star Center. So, since this is a recording, I have added the summary of each section before I get into any details, so you can reference them easier if you're looking at this in the video. So let's get right into the first best practice: make the content relevant. So as you heard me say in the first slide, I said the word essential, and I want you guys to take this away from after you're done with this presentation. A Star Center only contains the essential information. The essential information comes in, you can say, many different topics. So the first one is you're going to limit the number of columns you're going to display on each portlet, because there's really no limit as to how many columns you're going to display, but if you give the user too much information, they're not going to see any value in that information because it's simply too much of it. So to be specific with the number of columns, I'm saying between 3 and 5 columns per portlet. So 3 minimum, 5 maximum. The second one is we're going to summarize the results with the graphs, because it is easier for most people to see a graph that compares the values of, for example, 2 KPIs or a different status of work orders than seeing the different kind of records in the portlet. Instead of just seeing just rows of text, they're going to see an actual pie chart which is going to tell them how many you have of each record. And the last thing that I mentioned at the very beginning is you have to be very selective about the quick insert portlet. So just to go over it again, the quick insert portlet lets you quickly create records in any application you choose. So if you give it to a lot of people, this may lead to the creation of unnecessary records simply because it might not be very related to the role. So for example, someone in procurement wouldn't need access to a quick insert portlet to someone that works with work management. They're not going to be creating work orders. They're probably going to be creating purchase orders or purchase requisitions. Also, we recommend that your business should verify that the user flow requires this functionality as well. Like as we said, like if you add more records to your database, it might bog down your database and you have irrelevant records, and it might be really bad for you to clean up later. Now, the next thing is that you're going to limit the number of query-based portlets. So just to go over it again, query-based portlets are portlets that have a query that they run against the database to get the information that they need. So there are 3 types of query-based portlets, as you can see here. We have the KPI graphs, KPI lists, and result sets. So what exactly do I mean by limit these numbers? We're talking about 4 or less portlets per template. And as I said in the previous slide, we want to keep the columns of these portlets between 3 and 5. Now, because of these portlets, they always run the query whenever the Star Center is refreshed. That's why we want to keep this limited, because if we have a query that's going to take a long time, that portlet has to get all the information from the database first, and then it has to load the rest of the Star Center. So if there's going to be a waiting time of around, let's say, 30 seconds for just one portlet, that's not going to be efficient for the user. It's not going to give it a good experience when they're using Maximo. So obviously we know that most likely you're going to be needing more portlets per Star Center. So what do you do in this case if you need more than 5 portlets? Then one of the best practices is that you're going to have multiple Star Centers with few portlets each instead of multiple portlets for just one Star Center. I've actually seen Star Center that have around 25 portlets, many of them being result sets and KPI graphs, and while it does provide some information to the user, it takes about 45 seconds at the very least to load. So when you're waiting for this long for a Star Center to load, your mind starts drifting away and you don't really see value in the information, as opposed for it being snappy. Like just open the Star Center and it loads, so you're good to go. Next, I want to get a bit into a technical topic here. So you want to leverage the indexes and transaction and portlet tables. As with everything in Maximo, all the configuration is stored in the database. So first of all, what is an index? An index is a data structure that improves the speed of data retrieval operations on a database. So what this means is it's going to take some of the information on the database, it's going to store it somewhere else, and it's going to sort it so that whenever that field is referenced again, it's going to know exactly where to look for that because it's already sorted. Now, the drawback of this is that you require more storage space. So if storage space is not an issue in your organization, then we recommend you take a look at leveraging indexes. So the one holding everything together here in the database perspective is the layout ID. The layout ID is the field that all the Star Center portlets and the Star Center configuration, they're linked together. And you can always apply more indexes as you need on other tables. As I'm going to show in a little bit, I'm going to show you all the tables that we have here that are related to the Star Centers. Also, one more thing I want to add now we're talking in databases, it's that you want to delete the Star Center records for inactive users, because Maximo automatically does not delete the Star Center records when you delete a user or when you set it to inactive. So make sure you have a maintenance process for regularly deleting data for any inactive users. As I mentioned, this is what the structure for the database looks like. Don't worry too much about it. I just want to illustrate which tables would need to be having an index and layout ID. As you can tell, the middle table here that everyone's pointing out to, this is a layout table, and that one has the configuration of the Star Center. Basically, how many portlets do you have, what's the name of it, who's the owner, what's the order of the portlets, all sorts of stuff. Then you can see here in the other tables in blue that these are tables related to each specific portlet. So for example, the RS config, it's a table for the result set. The report list config table is a table for the report list portlet. Then we have KPI config and so on. Now, just to illustrate this a little further, we can see that I'm just going to quickly go over the description of each table and just go over here saying that the layout table is the one that holds everything together, so the configuration from Star Center. And then you have one table for each kind of portlet in your Star Center. And last but not least, for the overall good practices for Star Center, it's the display records requiring attention. Every efficient Star Center contains a portlet that displays to the user the records that require his or her attention. These will typically be records essentially to the person's role and are typically found as workflow notifications. So basically anything that's done through workflow, anything that the user needs to route to someone else, or the user needs to approve for the work, or for example, the purchase order to be approved so that it can be sent to the vendor. You can also, if you're for any chance you're not using the workflow in your Maximo, then these can also be set up as a result set. All you need to do is join the work order table or whatever application you have to the workflow assignment table, and that can be easily done. Now, we know that a lot of Star Centers, they're not going to remain the same. They're always going to need to change from time to time, where the users want to add something else, they want to add a column, they want to add something that's going to add more value to it. So Star Centers have no value if they're static. So that's why I want to also talk about the editing approaches in the Star Centers. So to illustrate the approaches that we have here, I'm going to display 3 approaches, 2 of them being extremes, and 1 of them being the happy medium, which I think is the best practice. So let's go to the first extreme here. The first extreme is you're going to lock everything. Excuse me, this is going to be free for all. So you're going to give users access to modify any Star Center they want, any template they want. Before we go any further, what is a template? A template is pretty much a blueprint of your Star Center. So once you set up a template in Maximo, any user can download that template, and all the contents inside the template they're going to be copied to their local Star Center. So in this case, you're going to let, as you can see in the picture here, these are all options for modifying the templates. So you're going to let the users modify any template they want. And obviously there are some good things about it, which in this case is that the users can get exactly what they need. But there's also a few bad things you got to keep in mind, is that the updates to the templates will cause rework for the user in case somebody modifies a template that somebody else already modified. Because you're giving it all these access to users, they might not follow best practices. Probably somebody that is not experienced in SQL, so it creates a query from the database and it really bogs down the database for some reason. And also, you're trying to give support to your users because they found an issue. Finding the root cause of this issue may be challenging because you don't know exactly what they did. You're just seeing the issue. So backtracking a little bit here might be a little bit difficult dealing with this. The second one we have is the total opposite of the one I just talked about, which is to lock everything down. So as you can see in the picture here, there are no editing options at all. So what does this mean? This means that the users are not going to be able to modify anything in the Star Center. By anything, I mean anything at all. So that's going to be, if they want to add just a column to the Star Center, they won't be able to do it. Somebody else has to be able to do it, like whoever the person is that is modifying the templates. So obviously there's good things, there's bad things. So the good things are that you get a consistency across the user base. Then because they don't know, they're not changing anything, you know exactly what's going on, and the support and troubleshooting gets simplified, and you can manage the performance better because you know that you know which queries are going into the portlets, you know how everything is set up, so you know it's not going to bog down the database. But obviously the really bad thing, a really bad con in my opinion, is that there's no flexibility for the users. So they won't be able to adapt to changes. They want to add something else that they need to see in the Star Center. They'll have to go through the process of getting in touch with whoever's in charge of changing the templates, and then we'll have to wait. So it's probably not one of the best approaches. And last, which is the happy medium that I mentioned, it's that I call it a hybrid method. It's you generate the templates, so the templates are the blueprints as we discussed right now, but you provide our users a whiteboard they can use. So what do I mean by a whiteboard? By a whiteboard I mean that you provide users access to modifying their Store Centers, but they're going to be able to modify their local Store Center only. They're not going to be able to modify any templates. So for example, you display a Store Center, like you give them a template they can download it from, so they get all the contents of this template in their local Store Center. And let's say they want to add a few portlets to it. When they add those portlets, they're going to be added to their own local copy of the Store Center. So nobody else can see those portlets except the user that added it. If they go and reload the template, those two portlets he just added are going to be removed. So basically everything is going to be copied again from the template. All the changes are going to be lost. So, you know, we still get the two good things about this is that the users get what they want, and you get consistency across major Store Centers because you can have all the major Store Centers built into templates. So anybody regarding to that role for Store Center, they can download it and they can customize it however they want without actually modifying the template. But also there's bad things. The first one is that you need more configuration, especially when security groups are involved. So based on the role, based on the security, you're going to have to set it up so that certain people can see certain templates. Also, we have the same as support and troubleshooting. So if the users run into any issues, it's going to be a bit of a challenge sometimes to see what exactly led to that issue. And also, given the freedom you're giving to the users, they might not follow the best practices. So it might bog down the database as well. So now, you heard me talk about a lot about Portlet queries and accessing the database and everything. So the next topic we want to introduce is the Portlet queries best practices. So going over it again, what's a Portlet query? A Portlet query, it's a portlet that uses a query to get information from the database and display it to the user. So given there's a pretty high degree of freedom here for the user, so I would like to say it's even a double-edged sword because if it's powerful if you use it properly, but it can also backfire if you don't know how to properly use it. So this is probably one of the most useful queries, so that's where I thought it deserved its own section here. So here's the summary of the section, and a little caveat here is that it's going to get a little bit technical, but I'm going to try to keep it as high level as possible given how our audience is. So the first one is to use the application's default query. What is the application default query? It's the query that you can see in Maximo whenever you go into any application. So I'm going to display this in the demo later, but the application default query you can see it via under advanced search, you select word clause, and then you're going to see a query that's always going to be there whenever you open the application first. So as you can see in the screen, an example would be the work order tracking application will be this one. This is the query that displays whenever I open the work order tracking application. So how can you use this to further improve your queries? Then you're going to add your custom query to this query here, the one you already see here. So it's going to be in addition to your query. And how does this work? This works because it filters out the most relevant records. So for example, talking about the work order tracking application, you can tell that it says history flag equals 0 or false and instatask equals 0 or false as well. So saying you're excluding the records that are history or the records that are at task. So then you would just add anything that you want add to your query to this query here, and then that's going to filter all these relevant records that the user might not want to see, and then it's going to improve the efficiency of your query. Staying in the same type of queries, I want to talk about using membership conditions. And membership condition is a query clause that tests the value for membership in a list of values of subquery. So what does that mean in English? That means that instead of looking for values individually, let's say you want to look for a work order that is in 3 or 4 different statuses, you're going to make the database the query look for these values in a group. As you can see here, the membership condition that is the most common membership condition is in. So it's going to go, for example, status in, and we're going to put all search values here instead of what Maximo does, that it compares all the values separately via an OR clause. So going at it again, instead of looking for all the values individually, instead of, for example, here we oh, look at all the work orders that have this status one, or this status, or this status, we're going to look for all the status that we want at once. So what would this look like in Maximo? Like this. So like I said, the top query, it's the same as the bottom query. We're looking for all the work order statuses that are in approved, cancel, in progress, or active. And instead of having this, which, you know, it's not too bad right now, but if you want to add more statuses to it, it's going to look huge. It's probably not going to be as readable as the one on the bottom. Instead, here you have this, which looks clean, looks good, and it's pretty easy to understand. Now, I just want to share an experience here with working with a client. They had their query build at the one on top here, and they wanted to add an extra status to it, and for some reason they removed one of the parentheses by accident. So the whole query, and they had something else behind that query. They had a bigger query, not just the status ones. So their query not only returned the wrong results, but also took almost 2 minutes to display the results that it was looking. So yeah, always be careful with the parentheses, and that's what I like the membership condition, because you know the parentheses are required for it to work properly, whereas here you can remove the parentheses and it's going to work the same, but then the functionality might be affected. Now, going into joins, you know that joins are a big part of Maximo because it's a relational database. So when we're doing joins, instead of doing select star, well, for those of you who are not familiar with SQL, select is a command that we use to retrieve information from the database. So it's pretty much select this field from this database. So the difference between these two here, between select 1 and select star, is that select 1 is simply going to select the value 1, which you know it's a constant. The computer doesn't have to do anything to get that value, whereas select star, it's going to get all the columns from the current database. From the current table. So this is pretty much just saying, give me 1 whenever you see a match in my join. So it's too technical, but you know I'm not going to get too much into it. And the last topic that I want to talk about is regular expressions. So again, this is a very technical topic. I could go down the rabbit hole and talk about this for hours, but I'm going to keep it very high level. So what is a regular expression? It's a sequence of characters that define a search pattern. What does that mean in plain English? That means that we're going to build a pattern that represents one or many values. And it's used for matching complex patterns, as you can see here. So an example I found, which is pretty easy to relate for most people, it's this here. This is a regular expression that's going to tell us all the values that contain either Stephen with a V, you can see here, or is this straight line here. It's that's how you use in regular expressions. This is the or in regular expressions, and then Stephen with a PH. You can see here is going to return all the fields that contain Stephen or Stephen. So what does it look like in Maximo? As I said before, Maximo by default uses separate OR clauses when you're comparing values. So for example, you want to look at the person group and you want it to have 4 different values. You know, person like engineering, like email, security, or office. Instead of doing this, you're using a regular expression. This is what it's going to look like. Just like I said, the straight line is the OR. So we go engineering or email or security or office. and this is just following the syntax of what a regular expression looks like. So this is as much as I'm going to talk about this. If there's any questions, please feel free to email me at the end of this slide, at the end of this presentation. Now that's it for the technical part. So now with every new iteration of Maximo, there are always a bunch of features that get added to the software, and the Star Center module was no exception here. So I want to bring attention to what I think are the three of the most relevant features in 7.6 that relate to Star Centers. So this is the summary, and let's get right into the first one. So the first one is the sidebar navigation, and this is actually not a Star Center specific feature. This is actually something you can see in everywhere in Maximo. So how is this useful? If you remember in 7.5, you would have to go to the top right corner and then bring out all the menu and go into the application that you wanted. So every single time, it starts getting boring. So now that we have this bar to the side everywhere in Maximo, and the user can hide it as well, it's pretty easy to access any other application in it. And I want to bring attention to one of the other features in this. It's called the My Recent Applications, as you can see here in this picture here. Everything that it does is just starts saving all the information, all the applications that the user has accessed during his session, and keeps them in order. So, for example, if I access the work order tracking application, like you can see, and then I access the purchase order application, then those two applications are going to be my recent applications. So instead of looking for each application in their module every single time, they're all going to be in the My Recent Applications here. Now, as I said in Maximo, it can be customized. So with the system property that I'm displaying here in the slides, webclient.maxRecentApps, you can increase or decrease the number of applications that are displayed in that window, or even disable it entirely by setting it to 0. The second feature that I want to display here in 7.6 is that you're now able to download the results as results in CSV format. CSV format is a comma-separated value, and it's just a type of file that Excel can easily open. So how does this work? The philosophy behind this feature is that a lot of people saw that results said they had really good information they wanted to see, but in order for them to be able to download that information into another file for reporting purposes or any other purpose that they want to see, they had to run to the actual application using the icon as you see here, the one with the green arrow, just below the red arrow, go into the actual application that's going to display all the records in the result set, and then download it from there. So it doesn't sound that cumbersome, but once you have to do it a few times a day, it starts getting to you for sure. So by simply adding this icon here, Maximo is going to let you download whatever you see in the result set. So that's in the result set only, and that's only going to include the columns that you see in the results, not in the whole application. So again, I'm able to customize this. The labels that are displayed when you download the file, they can be changed when it says max attribute CFG title system property. And one thing to keep in mind is that the version number for this is 7.6.04 or later. Now, the last thing, it's the ability to truncate the text and results. So truncate means to shorten. So as you can see here, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit because I didn't have much room to show you a good example here. So what I mean by this is that, for example, look at the results out here. If you look at PO 1013, 1013, the third one, you're going to see that it's the longest description in the result set, and if you have another portlet next to it that's going to also take a lot of room, you might see some horizontal scrolling, and that kills the purpose of displaying all this essential information at a glance. So right now, because the default value for this system property is false, then this is not activated right now. So what does it look like when you activate this feature? It looks like this. So you can see the third line here, PO 1013, has its long description truncated to a maximum column value that Maximo decides. So this is going to prevent the horizontal scrolling in your Star Center. And as I mentioned before, the default value is false, so make sure you go to the System Properties application and you enable this property, which is stored in Portlet text. So that concludes our presentation over just over the best practices. So I have set up a quick demo for you. So let's just open Maximo 7.6 now. Okay, so let's log in. What I want to show you is the difference between an efficient Star Center, a Star Center has too much, and an inefficient one. So as you can see here, one of the default Star Centers for Maximo is the administration Star Center. As you can see, there's a lot of portlets going on, and it's already been what 20 seconds, and it's still loading. So this is something we don't want the Star Center to have, because we want the information to be displayed almost immediately. And I don't know why it's still loading. It should. So see, this is bad, because the user is just going to be waiting for the information to come up, and then it's going to just hinder the whole Maximo experience here. So what I want you to show you is, I'm going to show you how to build an efficient Star Center. So we're going to go into this demo Star Center we have set up here, and this is an empty Star Center right now. See, oh, it was loading right now. Okay, so let's just add a few portlets here. So we go into the top right column. It says Change Content Layout. Click here. So as you can see, it's pretty neatly organized what you can add. So let's say for the left column, I want to add some, let's say, the favorite applications. So let's go Select Content. Let's go Favorite Applications. And I can add many portlets at the same time as well. It doesn't have to be one at a time. I'm going to add a report list as well, and a result set. For the right column, I want to add a couple more things. So I want to add, let's say, a bulletin board. Let's open this, select content. So you got the bulletin board. Then, as we discussed, an efficient Star Center contains the records that require attention from the user. So in this case, let's assume that the workflow is active, and then we're going to add the A-box assignments. So it's going to display all the required records for the user that is currently logged in. Then we're going to add a KPI graph as well. And then we're going to add another result set. Now this is just for adding the portlets. You have to set them up individually. So we just click Finished. And now the layout of a Star Center is done. So you can see there's no data found. Everything needs to be set up. So I just want to bring out to your attention that how many query-based portlets we have in this Star Center. We have the result set, KPI graph, and another result. So we have 3 in total, so we're keeping it under 4. And this is as much, probably one more should be okay, but this is probably as much as you need for an efficient Star Center. As if we go back to the other one, let's see if it wants to load this time. There we go. So let's count how many query-based portlets we have here. So KPI graph, we have 2, actually 3. So that's 3 queries running for this Star Center. Then the KPI list, we have 1 portlet, but remember that you can add many KPIs to a single portlet. So that means we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 queries running for this portlet only. And then we have a result set, 2 result set actually, 1 in the graphical form as well. So we do the math, we have 1, 2, plus 3, 5, and another 5. We have 10 queries running for this result, for this Star Center. So these are way too many queries for a single Star Center, because if one of them is not efficient, it's going to affect the other ones as well. And imagine having around 200, 300 users with these Star Centers. It's really going to have a negative impact on your database. So let's go finish the demo Star Center that we're building right now. So let's set up the easy ones first. Let's go to the favorite applications. So click on the pencil to set it up. Now we can select whichever applications we want to add the shortcuts to. So let's say I want to go action tracking and assets. Nice and easy. So just these two, okay. And then finished, and we're done. To show you how it works, it's very simple. You click on the link, and it's going to take you to that application. So as you can see, there's no need to look for that in the menu. So let's go back home. And just to bring it to your attention as well, that my recent applications, since I just went into, let's go back to the Demo Store Center. Since I just went into this application, into the Actions application, this is going to be displayed in my recent application. So let's go, my recent applications here. You can see it's the very first one, Action Tracking. So now let's set up the report list. As I said, this is a report list. This is a report that just gives you shortcuts for your reports. So you can add any report from any application. So you just click Select Report. And then just keep it simple here. Let's add 3 or 4. Let's go to the first one, looks nice. Then just have one of each. Go this one as well. Click OK. Click Finish. And that's it. Wait for it to load. There you go. So you click one of these, it's going to run the report. I don't want to get into too much detail right now, so I'm just going to set up the next one. So bulletin board, there's no setup needed. Everything that the administrator sets in the bulletin board application is going to be displayed here automatically. The inbox assignment, same thing. The only thing I want to show for this is that you can change how many columns are displayed. So let's just go right into it, and I'm going to quickly show you. So you can see these are all columns that are available. So in total we have 48. Then depending on the configuration or customization of the database, there may be more than that. And you can always have the same, I can always add more columns to it. So let's leave it at the default. So let's just go back and go up to the next portlet here. So I'm going to go no. So now let's work with the more interesting portlet. So let's go KPI graph. As I said, KPI graph can display one or many KPIs, but we're going to keep it as one here, so we're going to see the meter display that it has. So we're going to just simply click KPI. See, all the menus are consistent, so it's pretty straightforward to set up your portlets. So let's have current user sessions. How many users are using Maximo currently? And just as an aside, a KPI can be set up through the KPI application. So as you can see here, it's going to run a query, and it's going to display the value for that. Now, you have two result sets. So just to illustrate the difference with the result sets, I want to set up one that has an existing query in the system and one where I don't have an existing query. So let's set up the first one with an existing query. So same as that, pick the pencil. So let's see, I want to see all the approved work orders in my work order tracking application. So the first thing you do, you select the application. So in this case, it will be work order tracking. So we go whoa track. There we go. So now it's going to bring up all the available queries in that application. And then you're going to select approve work orders, which is an already existing query as I mentioned. And then the last thing is we're going to set up how many columns we're going to display. So we're going to keep the 3 columns because that's everything I need to see. As I said, I want to keep the essential information being displayed. And if there's any need to look into more information for that record, then I'm going to go into the actual work order tracking application. So a little neat trick here is that you can write down the columns you want separated by a comma. So that's going to bring all the matches for all the values that you you typed. So for example, I want to see the work order number, the description, and the status. Click enter. So you can see here its description is displayed first. Then we're going to go to the next page because there's more records available. There's status and the work order number. Select the fields. You add selected. So you're going to move them all to the bottom. Then I'm going to change the order of these. So for example, I want to see descriptions, I want to see in the second column. Work order, I want to see it in the first column. So we put a 1 here. And then I go status for the next one, 3. Then I always click save. It's just one of my things. And then I click finished. So we're waiting for that, and we can see that all the work order that are approved are going to be here. So pretty straightforward stuff. So now how about we go into setting up the portlet that does not have a query like I told you. So the first step for this is you're going to set up a query in whatever application you want to be displayed. So for example, in this case, we want to go to, let's say, work orders again. So let's go application, work order tracking at the very top. Now for that, going back to the application's default query, you can see that under advanced search, you click the arrow, you go word class, and the default query is going to be here already. See, it's already here. So as I said, the custom query has to be in addition to this. So what we're going to do is, how about I want to see all the work orders that are in the 3 C's, meaning that we're going to use canceled, closed, or completed. So first of all, what we have to do is we don't have to delete this query because we're going to use it, and then we just have to add the filter for the status. So let's say and status, which is the field name. Now we're going to use the membership condition in that I mentioned in the queries best practices portion of my presentation. And status in open close parentheses, so can close complete. So let's make sure everything's fine, then close complete. There's double quotes here. I think that was the issue last time, double quotes. So find. There we go. That's what we're looking for. So you can see we only have completed work orders. So what we have to do after this is once you set up your query, you're going to save the query. So you click here, Save Query. And then you're going to set it to whatever the name you want. So let's say query for demo Star Center. And for time's sake, I'm just going to use the same for the description as well. And one thing to add, if you're creating a query that somebody else is going to use under portlets, you have to set it to public. In this case, because it's only for us, it's going to be okay. So we just go okay. So now the query is going to get saved, and we're going to be able to select it. So we go back to our Star Center. Then the result to that has not been set up, it's down here. So all we have to do, it's the same thing as the other result said. Select application, we select work order tracking application, which is where I selected when I build my query, so work order tracking. And then the query is going to be query demo for Star Center, this one. And then let's say I only want to see the status. So let's say I want to actually, let's go to the work order number and the status. So let's go this. Okay, so it's probably going to be on the other page. There you go, so status and work order number. So, select the fields, and then we add it to the selected section on the bottom. then, how about, because we have 3 different statuses, I want to see it in a graphical way. So let's go to the chart options, and I want to see it in a pie chart just for it to be easy and concise. So let's say, yes, I want to see the chart by default. You select this if you want to see the chart always pop up instead of the list. Then we set up the pie chart. And then for many of the attributes you added for it to be displayed in the list, you can select them from here, which is the display by. So in this case, I want to see them by status. So as you can see, it's on a work order number, status. So I'm going to select status. And that's it. So it's going to save it. Then finally, I'm going to click finished. And it should display right now whatever work orders I have in a pie chart, which they're all going to be completed, I believe. Now it's loading. There you go. See? 100% completed, count 7. And you click here, it's going to take you to all the completed work orders. There you go, the same query. So that concludes the demo. Thank you very much for watching this video. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, which you can contact me at the number provided below in that presentation right now. So again, my name is Ken Rhoda. As you can contact me 403-648-3103, extension 704, or krodas@ontrustconsulting.com. All right, thank you very much.